Welcome, dear listeners, to the veiled corridors of history and horror, where shadows whisper and the past refuses to rest. Today, we embark on a journey through the dimly lit paths of Portland, Oregon. Not the bustling streets you walk by day, but the forgotten realms that lurk beneath. This is the story of the Shanghai Tunnels, a network of passages shrouded in darkness and mystery, where the echoes of the lost and the damned murmur against the cold, unyielding stone. Beneath the vibrant life of the city, there exists a hidden underworld, a place that thrives on whispers of the past, a labyrinth that holds secrets so dark they've been swallowed by the shadows. In the early 19th century, these tunnels were the stage for unspeakable acts, where many a soul was spirited away, never to see the light of day again. They say that tunnels are haunted by the spirits of those who were taken, those who met their end in the cold embrace of the earth. As we peel back the layers of history, a chilling narrative unfolds. Imagine, if you will, a time when the ground beneath your feet was a gateway to oblivion, where every shadow could conceal a predator, waiting to drag the unsuspecting into the depths of despair. The air is heavy with the weight of untold stories, of lives cut short, of spirits yearning for release. So, turn down the lights and let the darkness envelop you. Lend me your ears, and perhaps a piece of your courage, for we are about to enter a world where the line between the living and the dead is as thin as the veil of mist that rolls in from the sea. This is not just a tale of ghosts and goblins. This is a story of humanity, of its capacity for both great evil and great courage. Prepare yourself, for we are about to descend into the shadows of Shanghai, where the past is alive, and the whispers of the forgotten are about to be heard. Welcome to Shadows of Shanghai. Whispering walls. In the heart of the Pacific Northwest, nestled among towering pines, and kissed by the misty breath of the Columbia River, lies Portland, Oregon, a jewel of the early 19th century. Its streets bustle with the energy of a burgeoning city on the edge of the frontier. Merchants hawk their wares with boisterous calls. Fishermen boast of the day's catch, and the air is thick with the scent of pine, river water, and the earthy promise of prosperity. Yet, beneath this veneer of vibrant life and commerce, a different world exists, a shadowy reflection of the city of Beth. As night falls, the bustling streets give way to whispered conversations in dimly lit taverns and shadowed alleyways. These are not the whispers of lovers or the conspiratorial murmurs of business deals made under the cover of darkness. No, these whispers speak of something older, something darker. They tell of the Shanghai Tunnels, a complex network of underground passages that snake beneath the city like the roots of a great, unseen tree. To the uninitiated, the very mention of the tunnels is met with a shiver, a quick glance over the shoulder, as if the mere act of speaking of them might invoke their dark inhabitants. The locals, hardened by life on the frontier, but not immune to the fear of the unknown, speak of the tunnels in hushed tones. They tell tales of men and women who vanished without a trace, spirited away in the dead of night. Their fate a mystery that haunts the city to this very day. Rumors abound of the tunnel's uses, each more sinister than the last. Some say they were used by criminals to move goods, and sometimes people unseen beneath the city. Others whisper of dark rituals and gatherings, where the price of admission was one's very soul. But the most persistent tale, the one that sends shivers down the spine of even the most skeptical listener, is that of the Shanghai. Unlucky souls, so the stories go, were kidnapped from the taverns and opium dens that lined the streets, dragged into the depths of the tunnels, never to be seen again. Some say they were put on ships, forced into a life of servitude on the high seas, their cries for help echoing off the cold stone walls, unanswered. As we delve deeper into the heart of this story, we must ask ourselves, what truths lie buried in the darkness beneath Portland's streets? Are the tales of the Shanghai Tunnels mere urban legend, the product of overactive imaginations, and the human penchant for storytelling? Or is there something more, a sinister thread woven into the fabric of the city's history, waiting to be uncovered? For now, the tunnels remain shrouded in mystery, their secrets locked away in the whispers of the past. But remember, dear listeners, in the world of shadows, truth and legend often intertwine, leaving us to wonder where one ends and the other begins. Welcome to the whispering walls of Portland, where the echoes of the vanished still linger, and the story of the Shanghai Tunnels is just beginning to unfold. The unseen hand. In the shadow of Portland's burgeoning waterfront, where the Willamette River caresses the city's edge, there worked a young dock laborer named Thomas. With the strength of his back and the sweat of his brow, Thomas toiled from dawn until dusk, unloading the bounty that ships brought from distant lands. Yet, for all his familiarity with the docks and their ceaseless activity, Thomas began to notice anomalies that set his nerves on edge, peculiar occurrences that could not be dismissed by the rational mind. It began with the disappearance of a fellow worker, a man known to Thomas only in passing, but whose absence cast a long shadow over the docks. Then came the whispers that seemed to follow Thomas as he moved about his work, whispers that spoke of shadows moving in the night, and figures cloaked not just in darkness, but in silence, as if the very air around them was unwilling to carry their presence. Driven by a mix of concern and curiosity, Thomas found himself paying closer attention to the comings and goings around the docks. and the taverns that dotted the waterfront. Night after night, he watched as faces, both familiar and unknown, dipped in and out of the lantern light, some never to return. It was as if the city itself had developed an appetite, swallowing up souls with a hunger that was never satisfied. One evening, as a fog rolled in from the river, thick and enveloping, Thomas's vigil bore fruit. He spotted a group of men, their movements furtive, as they escorted a stumbling figure through a secluded alley. The fog seemed to gather around them, cloaking their actions from prying eyes. But Thomas followed, driven by a determination to uncover the truth. His pursuit led him to the edge of the known, to a place where the cobblestones gave way to the unkempt, and the shadow of an old warehouse loomed large. There, hidden beneath layers of neglect and forgotten debris, Thomas discovered a small, unassuming door. Its existence seemed out of place, a relic untouched by time in a city that was always moving forward. With a heart pounding in his chest, and a cold grip of fear tightening around him, Thomas pushed open the door. What greeted him was not the interior of a warehouse, but the gaping maw of a tunnel, its darkness complete and absolute. A chill ran down his spine, for he knew without doubt that he had found one of the fabled entrances to the Shanghai Tunnels. The air within was cool and stagnant, carrying the faintest hint of salt from the river, and something else, something unidentifiable but undeniably ominous. Thomas stood on the threshold, the weight of countless stories and warnings pressing down on him. Yet, it was not enough to deter him. With a deep breath, he stepped into the darkness, leaving the familiar world behind. As Thomas ventured further into the bowels of the city, the silence around him felt oppressive, a tangible force that seemed to swallow even the sound of his own footsteps. The darkness was complete, a void that played tricks on his eyes, conjuring shadows where none existed. Yet, Thomas pressed on, driven by a need to uncover the secrets that lay hidden in the depths of the earth. What he found within those ancient passageways would challenge the very foundation of his understanding, blurring the lines between the known and the unknowable, between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. For Thomas, the journey into the Shanghai Tunnels was just beginning, a journey that would lead him to confront the darkest corners of the human soul, and perhaps the very essence of fear itself. Into the abyss. With each step Thomas took into the bowels of the earth, the darkness seemed to thicken, wrapping around him like a shroud. The air was cool and damp, carrying with it the musty scent of decay and the weight of centuries. The narrow beam of his lantern cut through the darkness, revealing a path that twisted and turned, as if designed to confuse and disorient those who dared to enter. As Thomas ventured deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels, He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, always just beyond the reach of his light, fleeting and insubstantial, and charged with an unmistakable sense of intent. The silence was broken only by the sound of his own breathing, and the distant, indistinct noises that seemed to come from all directions at once, whispers of movement, the faintest echo of footsteps that were not his own. It was here, in the oppressive embrace of the underground, that Thomas encountered the first undeniable signs of recent activity. A discarded lantern, its light long extinguished, lay against a wall. Nearby, a piece of cloth, torn and stained, clung to the rough stone. Each discovery sent a fresh wave of apprehension through him, a visceral reminder that he was not alone in this subterranean world. As he pressed on, the tunnel began to widen, opening into a larger chamber. The remnants of what appeared to be a campsite were scattered about an extinguished fire pit, a few crude utensils, and more unsettlingly, a chain fashioned to the wall. It was a scene that spoke of habitation, of people living, or perhaps being kept, in the darkness. The implications of such a find were chilling, painting a picture of desperation and despair that lingered in the air like a bad memory. The mysterious sounds that had been his constant companions since entering the tunnels grew more pronounced here, a symphony of whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls. They were unintelligible, and imbued with an urgency that tugged at the edges of his consciousness, compelling him to listen, to try and discern meaning from the chaos. It was then that Thomas sighted a shadow that moved against the backdrop of darkness, not passed by any object within the reach of his lantern's light. It was fleeting, disappearing as soon as he turned to face it directly. But its presence was undeniable, a shiver and down his spine, the primitive part of his brain screaming at him to flee, to escape the oppressive darkness and the unknown threats it concealed. But Thomas stood his ground, driven by a mix of fear, curiosity, and a stubborn refusal to turn back. He realized then that the tunnels were not merely a physical space to be navigated, but a puzzle to be solved, a mystery that held the key to understanding the darkness that lay at the heart of Portland's past. With a determination born of desperation, Thomas moved deeper into the chamber, his lantern held high, casting light into the shadows, in a defiant challenge to the darkness. But with each step, the line between reality and nightmare began to blur, the shadows growing bolder, the whispers louder, until he was no longer certain if he was the hunter or the hunted. In the heart of the Shanghai Tunnels, Thomas would come face to face with the unknown, embarking on a journey that would test the limits of his courage and his sanity. For what lurks in the darkness is not just the ghosts of the past, but the very essence of fear itself, waiting to claim the unwary and the brave alike. echoes of the past. As Thomas ventured deeper into the abyss of the Shanghai Tunnels, the line between the present and the past began to blur. The air around him felt charged with stories untold, each step forward a journey back in time to an era when the city above was a wilder, more dangerous place. It was in this liminal space, where darkness meets the faintest glimmers of light, that Thomas's path crossed with that of an old sailor, a man whose weathered face was a map of a life spent at sea, and whose eyes held the depth of the ocean's mysteries. The old sailor sat alone, his presence in the tunnels as incongruous as a ship found miles inland. He regarded Thomas with a look that spoke of long years and the weight of secrets. "You're far from the light, young man," he said, his voice a rasp that echoed off the stone walls. "The shadows here are deep, and not all of them are cast by things that once lived." Thomas, his curiosity piqued and his passion momentarily forgotten, approached the sailor. "I seek to understand," he admitted, "to uncover the truth of what happens in these tunnels." The sailor nodded, as if he had expected no less. "Then listen well, for the story of the Shanghai Tunnels is a tale of darkness, not just in the absence of light, but in the hearts of men." He spoke of a time when Portland was a bustling port, a gateway for fortunes to be made and lost. That beneath the veneer of prosperity lay a sinister trade, one that preyed on the unwary and the unfortunate. "Shanghaiing," the sailor whispered, the word itself a chill breeze in the stagnant air. He told of men, and sometimes women, drugged or overpowered, then dragged through the very tunnels in which they now sat. These souls were sold to ship captains in need of crew, their freedom traded for a few coins, their futures cast to the wind and waves. As the sailor spun his tales, the darkness seemed to press closer, as if eager to hear of its own deeds. He spoke of the victims, some defiant to the last, others broken by their fate. "But it's not just the living you need to worry about down here," the sailor cautioned, his gaze piercing the gloom. "Spirits linger, trapped by their rage and their despair. They wander these tunnels, seeking release or revenge. Beware the whispers, for not all who speak mean you well." Thomas felt a shiver run down his spine, the stories igniting a fire of determination within him. "How do you know so much about these things?" he asked, the question hanging in the air between them. The sailor's smile was a sad twist of the lips. "Because, young man, I am one of the lucky few who escaped the fate of the Shanghai. But not all battles leave scars visible to the eye. Some wounds are carried within, haunting us more than any ghost." With those words, the old sailor faded into the shadows, leaving Thomas alone with his thoughts. The encounter had left him with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear: the tunnels were more than just a relic of the past. They were a living memory, a wound in the heart of the city that had never fully healed. Armed with the sailor's warnings, and the knowledge of the tunnel's dark history, Thomas pressed on. But now, he walked the fine line between the world of the living and the realm of the dead, where every shadow could hide a story, and every whisper was a voice from beyond the grave. shadows among us. In the depths of the Shanghai Tunnels, where the past and present weave together like the strands of a forgotten tapestry, Thomas found himself standing at the threshold of the unknown. The air was thick with the echo of the old sailors' tales. Each step forward the descent further into the heart of darkness. It was here, in the shadowy embrace of the tunnels, that Thomas had his first encounter with the apparitions of those who had been taken, those whose lives had been extinguished in a cold, unforgiving dark. The first spirit appeared as little more than a wisp of smoke, a subtle shift in the air that might have been dismissed as a trick of the light if there had been any light to deceive. But, in the utter blackness of the tunnel, the apparition was unmistakable. It moved with a sorrowful grace, its form barely discernible, yet unmistakably human. Thomas watched, his heart a tight knot in his chest, as the spirit hovered at the edge of his lantern's glow, its presence a palpable weight in the silence. Summoning every ounce of courage, Thomas spoke, his voice a fragile thread in the overwhelming darkness. "Who are you?" he asked, the words hanging in the air, heavy with the gravity of the moment. The spirit's response was a whisper, a breeze that stirred the dust of ages, carrying with it the faintest hint of a voice. Lost, it sighed, the sound a lament that resonated in the very bones of the tunnel. Encouraged by this initial contact, Thomas pressed on, his questions a bridge across the chasm that separated the living from the dead. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice steadier now, bolstered by a growing determination to uncover the truth. The apparition's form coalesced further, gaining substance as if drawn to the warmth of the living. "Taken," it whispered, its voice a tapestry of pain and despair. "Betrayed. Forgotten." Thomas's heart ached for the spirit, for the injustice of its fate. "How can I help you?" he asked, his desire to understand, to help, burning bright in the darkness. The spirit's response was a sigh, a sound that spoke of longing and loss. "Remember us," it implored, its form beginning to fade. "Tell our stories. Let us not be forgotten in the shadows." As the apparition dissolved into the darkness, Thomas was left with a profound sense of sorrow and resolve. He realized that the spirits of the tunnels were not malevolent entities, but lost souls, seeking acknowledgement, yearning for their stories to be heard. Buoyed by this revelation, Thomas moved deeper into the tunnels, his lantern a solitary beacon in the oppressive gloom. One by one, he encountered more spirits, each encounter a piece of the puzzle, a thread in the tapestry of the tunnel's tragic history. Some spirits were angry, their voices a storm of rage and betrayal. Others were sorrowful, their whispers a lament for lives cut short. But all sought the same thing, to be remembered, to have their stories told. Thomas listened, his heart heavy with the weight of their collective suffering. He promised each spirit that he would be their voice, that he would bring their stories into the light. And as he made his way through the winding passages, a plan began to form in his mind. He would not let the darkness win. He would not let the voices of the past be silenced. For in the heart of the Shanghai Tunnels, Thomas had found his purpose. He would be the bridge between the living and the dead, the keeper of forgotten stories. And in doing so, he hoped to bring peace to the restless spirits, to offer them the closure they had been denied in life. But the path ahead was fraught with danger, for not all secrets were meant to be unearthed, and not all shadows were eager to relinquish their hold on the past. The gathering storm. In the shadowy depths of the Shanghai Tunnels, a change was coming. The air grew thick with tension, a palpable charge that set Thomas's nerves on edge. The whispers of the past, once mere echoes of lost souls, began to crescendo into a cacophony of voices, each clamoring to be heard above the rest. It was as if the very walls of the tunnels themselves were coming alive, animated by the restless spirits within. Thomas pressed on, driven by a resolve that was now tempered with a growing sense of dread. The apparitions he encountered grew more numerous, their manifestations stronger and more vivid. Where once there were mere wisps of presence, now there stood figures so defined they could almost be mistaken for the living, if not for the ethereal glow that emanated from them, and the deep sorrow that filled their eyes. But it was not just the increase in activity that troubled Thomas. It was the nature of it. The spirits, once merely sorrowful or angry, became aggressive. Objects moved of their own accord, hurled by unseen forces, with malicious intent. Thomas narrowly avoided a rock that flew at him from the darkness, a clear warning that he was not welcome. Amidst this maelstrom of paranormal activity, Thomas stumbled upon a revelation that would forever alter the course of his journey. In a chamber deep within the tunnels, where the air felt charged with an ancient power, he found carvings on the walls. These were not the random markings of idle hands, but deliberate symbols, each one imbued with a sense of purpose and dark intent. As he traced the outlines of the carvings with his fingers, a vision flashed before his eyes. He saw a gathering of figures, their faces shrouded in shadow, around an altar upon which lay a bound and helpless victim. It was a ritual of summoning, an invocation of a powerful entity from beyond the veil. The air around the altar shimmered with a dark energy, coalescing into a form both terrifying and mesmerizing. The vision faded, leaving Thomas breathless and shaken. It was clear to him now that the tunnels harbored a secret far darker than he had imagined. The entity summoned in that ancient ritual was no mere spirit, but a powerful being that sought to dominate and control, binding the souls of the Shanghai to its will. Armed with this knowledge, Thomas understood the source of the increased paranormal activity. The entity was stirring, its power growing as it sought to assert its dominion over the tunnels and the spirits trapped within. The aggressive behavior of the apparitions was a reflection of its malevolence, a manifestation of its desire to keep the secrets of the tunnels shrouded in darkness. Thomas knew he could not face this entity alone. To free the spirits and uncover the truth of the Shanghai Tunnels, he would need help. But who would believe his tales of ancient rituals and powerful entities? Who would stand with him against a darkness that had lurked beneath the city for over a century, determined to find allies and to shine a light on the dark heart of the tunnels? Thomas emerged from the depths, his mission clear. The battle to free the spirits and uncover the secrets of the Shanghai Tunnels was just beginning, and Thomas would need all the courage, wit, and determination he could muster. For in the darkness, the entity waited, its power growing, ready to defend its secrets against those who dared to challenge its reign. Unearthing the truth. Armed with the weight of his discoveries and a resolve as unwielding as the earth itself, Thomas sought the expertise of those who tread the thin veil between the seen and unseen. He enlisted a team of paranormal investigators, individuals whose lives were dedicated to exploring the shadows and unmasking the mysteries that lay within. Together, they stood at the entrance to the Shanghai Tunnels, a motley crew bound by a common purpose: to confront the dark entity and to free the spirits ensnared in its grasp. As they descended into the darkness, each member of the team carried with them the tools of their trade: EMF meters to detect the presence of the supernatural, audio recorders to capture the whispers of the past, and cameras to document their journey into the unknown. But more than these, they carried an unwavering courage, for they knew the path ahead was fraught with danger. The tunnels welcomed them with a silence that was almost tangible, a stillness that belied the storm of activity that lay just beneath the surface. As they ventured deeper, the remnants of the old Shanghai operation began to emerge from the shadows. Chains wristed with the passage of time, bolted to the walls, spoke of captivity and despair. Personal belongings, scattered and forgotten, lay strewn about the passages: a locket containing a faded photograph, a well-worn shoe, a sailor's cap, each item a poignant reminder of the lives violently uprooted and thrust into darkness. The air grew heavier as they moved forward, charged with an energy that seemed to pulsate with the heartbeat of the tunnels themselves. It was here, amidst the relics of a bygone era, that they encountered the first signs of the entity's presence. A sudden drop in temperature sent shivers down their spines, breaths visible in the air as frosty mists. EMF meters spiked erratically, their screens awash with the electronic signature of the unseen. Thomas and the investigators set up their equipment, forming a circle of light and technology in the heart of darkness. As they began their attempt to communicate with the entity, the atmosphere shifted, a palpable tension that twisted the very air around them. A voice emerged from the static of the audio recorder, a voice that was neither human nor kind. its words a tapestry of anger and malice. "You dare!" it hissed, the sound filling the tunnels, reverberating off the stone walls. Determined to face the entity, Thomas stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear that clenched his heart. "We seek to free the spirits you hold captive. Release them from your grasp," he demanded, his words a beacon of defiance in the oppressive gloom. The entity's response was a roar, a sound so powerful it seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. The air became charged with a malevolent energy, the darkness alive with unseen forces that pushed and pulled at the intruders. Amidst the chaos, the team of investigators worked feverishly, their equipment capturing evidence of the paranormal activity that swirled around them. But it was the personal belongings of the victims, those silent witnesses to the horrors of the past, that served as the most powerful testament to the entity's reign of terror. As they documented their findings, Thomas realized that their journey into the tunnels was more than a confrontation with the darkness. It was a quest to bring light to the stories long buried in the shadows. Each item recovered, each recording made, was a piece of the puzzle, a step towards understanding the true nature of the entity and the means to defeat it. But the battle was far from over. The entity, enraged by their presence and their challenge, unleashed its fury upon them, a maelstrom of supernatural forces that threatened to overwhelm. Thomas and the team of paranormal investigators stood their ground, united in their purpose, even as the darkness sought to devour them. In the heart of the Shanghai Tunnels, a battle raged, a struggle not just for the souls of the departed, but for the truth that had been buried in the depths of the earth. And as they faced the darkness head-on, Thomas knew that their fight was not just their own, but a fight for all those who had been lost to the shadows, whose stories were yet to be told. The battle within. In the oppressive darkness of the Shanghai Tunnels, Thomas and his team of paranormal investigators stood on the precipice of the unknown, facing an entity whose power seemed as ancient and vast as the tunnels themselves. The air was electric, charged with a malevolent energy that sought to breach the circle of light and resolve they had formed. As the confrontation began, reality itself seemed to warp and twist around them. The walls of the tunnel pulsed and breathed, the stone contorting into grotesque faces that leered at them from the shadows. The very ground beneath their feet seemed to undulate, as if they were standing on the deck of a ship caught in a storm's rage. These were no mere tracks of the light or the mind. They were manifestations of the entity's power, a tangible assault on their senses designed to instill fear and doubt. The team fought to maintain their composure as vivid hallucinations assaulted them. Visions of their deepest fears materialized before their eyes. Loved ones in distress, personal demons made manifest, and nightmarish scenes of horror that seemed all too real. These phantoms sought to exploit their vulnerabilities, to divide and conquer by turning their own minds against them. But Thomas, armed with the resolve forged from his encounters with the spirits of the tunnels, pushed back against the tide of despair. He called upon the stories of the victims, their hopes, their sorrows, and their unyielding spirit in the face of darkness. With each name he spoke aloud, the hallucinations began to dissipate, the manipulations of reality growing weaker. It was as if the acknowledgement of the victims' stories was a light shining in the darkness, a beacon of hope that pierced the veil of fear. The entity, sensing its grip weakening, unleashed a torrent of energy, a desperate attempt to smother their resolve in shadow. But Thomas, guided by the knowledge of the tunnels and the legacy of those who had suffered within them, led the team in a chant that echoed the victim's plea for remembrance and release. With each repetition, the entity's power waned, its form flickering as if it were a flame caught in a gale. The air grew lighter, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the entity's hold on the tunnels began to falter. The team, united in purpose and strengthened by the stories of the past, pushed forward, their equipment capturing the moment of reckoning. As the entity's form dissipated, the tunnels themselves seemed to sigh, a release of tension that had been building for over a century. The shadows receded, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, a sense of peace settled over the underground labyrinth. Thomas and his team had faced the darkness head-on and emerged victorious. But their victory was not just for themselves, or for the thrill of the hunt. It was a victory for the spirits who had been trapped in the shadows, their stories untold and their rest unattained. As they made their way back to the surface, the team knew that their journey was far from over. There were more stories to uncover, more shadows to explore. But for now, they had shone a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope for those who had thought themselves forgotten. In the heart of the Shanghai Tunnels, a battle had been fought and won, not with weapons or brute force, but with the power of memory and acknowledgement. Thomas and his team had shown that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, the human spirit, bolstered by the courage to confront the past and the resolve to speak the truth, could prevail. Liberation. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the Shanghai Tunnels lay silent, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had raged within its walls only moments before. Thomas and his team, weary but resolute, witnessed the unfolding of a moment they had scarcely dared to hope for. The entity, a malevolent force that had held sway over the tunnels for over a century, was finally banished, its presence extinguished like a flame snuffed out by the wind. As the darkness receded, the spirits of the victims, Those souls bound to the entity's will began to emerge from the shadows. They were no longer mere whispers or fleeting apparitions. They appeared as luminous figures, their features softened by an ethereal glow. One by one, they approached Thomas and his team, their expressions no longer marred by the anguish and despair that had once defined their existence in the tunnels. With no words spoken, but a profound sense of gratitude conveyed in their silent farewells, the spirits began to fade away, their forms dissolving into the air. It was a liberation long overdue, a release from the chains of sorrow and darkness that had bound them to the tunnels. Thomas watched, a profound emotion swelling in his heart, as the spirits found their peace, their stories finally acknowledged, their existence finally honored. In the days that followed, the city moved to seal the entrances to the Shanghai Tunnels, a decision met with a mix of relief and resignation. The physical doorways to the darkness beneath the streets of Portland were closed, a barrier erected between the world of the living and the echoes of the past. But Thomas knew that the shadows of Shanghai would never be fully eradicated. The tunnels, with their labyrinthine passages and buried secrets, were a testament to the darker aspects of human nature, a reminder that history, no matter how hidden, leaves indelible marks. Thomas, changed forever by his journey into the depths, found himself standing at the threshold of a new chapter in his life. The battle against the entity had been won, but the fight to preserve the memories of those lost to the shadows continued. He dedicated himself to documenting the stories of the tunnels, to ensuring that the lessons of the past were not forgotten. Through books, lectures, and tours, he became a guardian of the history that lurked beneath Portland's streets, a voice for those who had once been voiceless. As he walked the streets of the city, the sun warm on his face, Thomas carried with him the knowledge that the true strength of the human spirit lay in its capacity for compassion, for courage in the face of darkness. The spirits of the Shanghai Tunnels had found their peace, but their stories would live on, a beacon of hope and a warning for future generations. The Shanghai Tunnels, sealed and silent, stood as a monument to the complexity of human nature, a world where light and darkness, hope and despair, were inextricably intertwined. And as Thomas moved forward, the echoes of the past a constant companion, he knew that the shadows of Shanghai, though banished, would always be a part of him, a reminder of the journey that had led him from darkness into light. Echoes in the stone. As the last rays of the setting sun bathe Portland in a golden light, the city settles into the embrace of the coming night. The bustling streets, the laughter of passers-by, and the distant sound of a river flowing quietly by all paint a picture of a city alive, vibrant, and ever moving forward. Yet, beneath this lively veneer lies a hidden history, a network of tunnels that once served as passageways to the unknown, to darkness, and to despair. The Shanghai Tunnels, with their labyrinthine corridors and shadowed recesses, have long been a source of fascination and fear, a reminder of a time when the line between freedom and captivity could be as thin as the turn of a card or the depth of a glass. The tales of those who were taken, of lives forever altered in the blink of an eye, are woven into the fabric of the city, an indelible part of its rich and complex history. Thomas, once a mere spectator to the city's bustling life, now finds himself a keeper of its secrets, a guardian of the stories that the tunnels hold. His journey into the heart of darkness, into the very essence of fear and courage, has changed him, shaped him into a bridge between the past and the present, between the shadows and the light. As the night deepens, Thomas makes his way to one of the sealed entrances of the Shanghai Tunnels, a ritual that has become as much a part of him as breathing. He stands before the heavy, iron-bound door, the silence around him a stark contrast to the cacophony of life just beyond. In these moments of quiet reflection, he pays his respects to the spirits he freed, to the memories he unearthed, and to the history he brought to light. But Thomas knows that the story of the Shanghai Tunnels is far from over. The sealed entrances, the darkened passageways, and the silent chambers hold more stories, more secrets waiting to be discovered. He knows that the shadows of Shanghai, though pushed back into the corners of the city's consciousness, are never truly gone. They linger, whispers in the stone, waiting for the moment when their tales can be told once more. As he turns to leave, Thomas feels the weight of the past on his shoulders, a solemn reminder of the responsibility he carries. He is a guardian of ghosts, a chronicler of the space between light and darkness, and in this role, he walks a lonely path, a path that leads ever back to the tunnels, to the heart of the city's hidden history. The Shanghai Tunnels, sealed beneath the streets of Portland, stand as a monument to human resilience and to the enduring power of story. For stories, like the spirits of the tunnels, seek the light, yearning to be heard, to be remembered. And as long as there are those willing to listen, to explore the shadows, the echoes in the stone will never fade. In the end, the Shanghai Tunnels remain a testament to the complexity of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is light to be found, stories to be told, and freedom to be won. And for Thomas, the journey continues, a never-ending quest to ensure that the voices of the past are never silenced, that the echoes in the stone are never forgotten. As our journey through the shadows of the Shanghai Tunnels comes to a close, we find ourselves standing at the edge of light and darkness, where the tales of the past meld with the pulse of the present. Thomas's journey, from a curious observer to the guardian of forgotten stories, reminds us that history, with all its complexities and shadows, is a living entity, constantly whispering its secrets to those who dare to listen. The Shanghai Tunnels, a labyrinth beneath the bustling streets of Portland, serve as a stark reminder of the depth of human resilience, of the capacity for both darkness and light that resides within us all. Through Thomas's eyes, we ventured into the heart of these shadows, uncovering stories of loss, of hope, and of liberation, stories that, though rooted in the past, continue to resonate with the timeless themes of human experience. As we seal the chapters of this tale, let us carry forward the light of awareness, the courage to explore the unseen, and the commitment to honor the stories etched in the echoes of history. The spirits of the Shanghai Tunnels, once bound in darkness, now find peace in the light of remembrance, a testament to the power of acknowledgement and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Thomas's visits to the sealed entrances, his silent vigils in honor of the spirits he freed, remind us that while the tunnels may be closed, the stories they hold are forever open, whispering to those who will listen, teaching us that in the darkest of places, there is always a story waiting to be told, a lesson waiting to be learned. And so, dear listeners, as we bring this podcast to its conclusion, let us not forget the shadows of Shanghai, the lessons they impart, and the light they can bring to our lives, for in every shadow lies the potential for illumination, and in every tale of darkness, there is a spark of hope waiting to be ignited. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Shanghai Tunnels. May the stories you've heard inspire you to explore the depths of history, to seek out the tales that linger in the shadows, and to shine a light on the forgotten corners of our world. Until we meet again, keep a light of curiosity burning bright, and remember, the end of one story is but the beginning of another. Farewell, dear listeners, until our next adventure into the heart of the unknown.